Hey Dissidia fans, I hope you've been having fun in the open beta so far. It's great being able to get my hands on as many characters as possible, practice, and mess around before the game's official release in North America. I can't wait to see how much everyone improves by the end of the week. It's almost surreal that the game is coming out so soon, and watching the community grow has been a blast. Anyways, as much as I love a good cast of heroes, it's the trials these characters face that defines them. For every enemy they defeat, there's always a seemingly endless horde of antagonists standing between them and their goals. From deformed monsters hell-bent on returning the world to the void, to misguided souls seeking meaning. These fiends challenge our heroes and force them to break their limits. In this video, I'll be picking a single villain from each numbered Final Fantasy game that I want to see added to Dissidia Final Fantasy NT, and talking about how I think they would play. I won't be including characters that appeared in Duodecim, as they will be making their way into the game eventually anyways, so no Gilgamesh this time, sorry guys. I also won't be including Final Fantasy XI, as I never played it. So let's get started. Final Fantasy I, the world went spinning into chaos because of an endless paradox caused by a cycle of repeating events. After the defeat of Garland, he was dragged 2,000 years into the past by 4 fiends to be revived as the embodiment of chaos. It's the fiends that kickstarted everything, and their appearance would continue to be a staple of the series moving forward in various forms. For this reason, my pick is the first of the 4 fiends, the Lich. He would be a marksman type who specializes in locking down opponents with binding attacks. His bravery attacks would range from large AoE attacks like Thundaga and Blizzaga, to single target attacks that lock down opponents with sleep or bind status effects. His HP attacks would consist of high-level magic like Flare, or spells that debuff enemies with status effects such as Death. His EX skill would be Warp, which would teleport enemies within a certain radius to random parts of the map and deal HP damage. Final Fantasy II is the first time they introduced an evil empire as the primary antagonizing force. They did it pretty well in my opinion. There were plenty of twists and turns, and the story was surprisingly dark. One of the craziest twists of all, however, was finding out that my pick, Leon, one of the main party members at the start of the game, was not only captured by, but was also working for the Empire as their infamous Dark Knight. Leon would be a Vanguard type and would act as sort of Dark Knight Cecil Plus, using a combination of zoning projectiles and hard-hitting physical attacks as his bravery attacks, with more functionality in the air. His HP attacks would mostly be counters, and his EX skill would be Dark Armor, which would cause him to counter the next bravery attack against him within 5 seconds, so people would really need to be aware when fighting against him. The events of Final Fantasy III were set into motion by a single man looking to avoid his own mortality. The fear of his own death drove him to drain the power of the Earth and Water Crystal, ushering in the tide of darkness and freezing time itself. This man was the great mage Master Zan. Zan would be a marksman type. His bravery attacks would be fast AoE elemental attacks, and his HP attacks would consist of quick long-range single target attacks. His EX skill would be an AoE burst that would cast stop on all enemies around him for about 3 seconds. For Final Fantasy IV, I'm going to stick with the 4 Archfiends. There are plenty of great antagonists to choose from, but the Fiends are the most memorable to me. And my favorite one has and always will be Rubicund. He's just such an honorable enemy that it's hard not to love him. He would be a marksman type, and his bravery attacks would be various types of fire attacks that cause burning and deal damage over time. His HP attacks would be very long-range fire-based attacks such as Inferno or counter-attacks. His EX skill would be Cloak, which would allow him to hide behind his cloak and heal if he's hit by an attack. For Final Fantasy V, I'm going to go with a pretty strange one. The famed Mimic Go-Go. He's always been an interesting character to me, and has one of the weirdest boss fights ever. Plus I think he could have some really cool mechanics. Goku would be a unique type, and to start, his only bravery attack would be a single swipe across to knock enemies back. With his EX skill, however, he would steal enemy bravery attacks one at a time, and the first attack you input would be his attack for the rest of the match. For example, if you used Mimic on Zidane and used your forward aerial, that input would be Scoop Art for the rest of the match, and you could mimic other attacks the same way with anyone on the enemy team. His HP attacks would be high level attacks from across all of the games. As Final Fantasy VI shows, unquestioned loyalty can often lead a noble character to allow heinous acts to occur. This is especially true for my next pick, General Leo. Many of my favorite characters in any story are ones with honor that happen to choose the wrong side. Leo would be a vanguard type, wielding a sword and shield to keep his enemies at bay. Unlike Warrior of Light, who focuses on reaching out and bullying targets away, Leo's bravery attacks would focus on him rushing into the middle of the action, bashing enemies away with his shield, or chaining together attacks with his sword. His HP attacks would mostly be close-range single target attacks, but he would also have attacks like Shock, which would cover a mid-range cone. His EX skill would be Morale, which would enhance the damage and defense of his party members within a close radius. Final Fantasy VII had a few enemy factions to deal with. The Turks, Shinra, Sephiroth's goons, man, there are so many to choose from. If I was including spin-off games, my pick would be obvious, but I'm not, so my pick goes to the CEO of the Shinra Electric Power Company himself, Rufus Shinra. He's cold, he's calculated, and I think his personality would clash with the rest of the villains perfectly. Shinra would be an assassin. His bravery attacks would focus on mid-range shotgun attacks and quickly laying traps or bombs. His HP attacks would focus on his company resources, like helicopters swooping in and machine gunning or remote missile strikes. His EX skill would be Escape, which would allow him to throw down a stun grenade, stunning nearby enemies for about a second and jump away. This EX skill would even work if he was in the middle of being comboed. For Final Fantasy VIII, I'm pretty sure everyone who's played the game knows who I'm going to pick. It's Cypher. I mean, he's Squall's rival. If he didn't have some cool interactions with the rest of the characters, I don't know who would. Plus, I think the Disciplinary Committee would make a sick team comp if they threw in Raijin and Fujin as well. Cypher would be an assassin, and while Squall focuses on long combo chains, Cypher would focus more on rushing in and hitting hard in short bursts. His bravery attacks would launch him towards single enemies, hit them a couple times, and launch them away. He'd also have Fyra to catch enemies off guard. His HP attacks would consist of his limit breaks, which would hit a wide area, or his reverse Zen Setsuken, which would be a counter. His EX skill would be Sorceress's Knight, which would give him super armor on his next attack, allowing him to cut through any bravery attack. Final Fantasy IX is without a doubt my favorite game in the series. Part of the reason for that is because it has my favorite character of all time, Beatrix. I love a good redemption arc, and man does this one deliver. She starts off as this unbeatable foe, and over time questions her station and realizes that the cause she's fighting for is false. Man, she's awesome. Not only are the fights against her grueling, but you lose every single time. She's unbeatable. And for all these reasons and more, I say, hashtag Beatrix for Dissidia. Beatrix would be a vanguard type. Her bravery attacks would be mid-range and allow her to hit a large radius, controlling an area of the battlefield. Her HP attacks would be her Psyken skills like Clim Hazard and Thunder Slash, and her EX skill would be her Stock Break, which would reduce all enemies' bravery in its reach to 1. For Final Fantasy X, well, it's Seymour, of course. He pretty much acts as the main antagonist of the game, with Sin being a force of nature. He starts off kinda creepy, and you hate him more and more as the game goes on and you learn all of his horrid acts that he commits. Seymour would be a marksman type, and chain together high-level black magic with his bravery attacks to decimate enemies from a distance. He would use attacks from his fiend forms like Lance of Atrophy and Total Annihilation as his HP attacks. His EX skill would be to summon Anima to fire Pain, which goes for all 3 enemies at once, causing them to break if hit. Final Fantasy XII is chock full of enemies to choose from, but the big bad Vayne is my pick. Why Square went with Gabranth instead of Vayne in Duodecim is beyond me, as he's the main antagonist of the game. Gabranth is Vader, sure, but Vayne is Emperor Palpatine. Vayne would be an assassin type and rush at his enemies with punches and kicks as his bravery attacks. His HP attacks would be his attacks from his Novus and Undying forms like Azure Vortis and Contempt, and he would be able to use two much like Vaughn. His EX skill would be stacking buffs similar to Kuja with his Novus and Undying form, increasing his stats until he died. Final Fantasy XIII was really strange and vague with its villains. There was no real clear motivation, and I didn't really feel much when I beat them. At least this is true for the first game. And as I'm not including sequels or spin-offs, my pick is Bartandalus. I know, he doesn't really attack with his human form, but for the sake of Dissidia, let's say he uses the same abilities. Bartandalus would be a marksman type and use various laser beams as his bravery attacks. His HP attacks would either inflict debuffs or cancel buffs on the enemy team on hit. His EX skill would be to go into his Lassie form for a moment and shoot a massive torrent of laser beams in all directions. Final Fantasy XIV. Man oh man does this game have a lot of great villains to choose from. But a single villain made more of an impression on me than any other, and that would have to be the heir to the Garlean Empire, Xenos Ye Galvis. I haven't beaten Stormblood yet, but man, I'm not sure I've ever loved to hate a character more. Every time he's on screen, he has this presence, and you know something's about to go down. Xenos would be a Vanguard type who's slow to move normally, but his bravery attacks would shoot him across the map quickly and allow him to chain combos together for massive damage. His HP attacks would be massive AoE attacks, and his EX skill would be Eye of Shinryu, which would greatly increase his movement speed and damage. And finally, Final Fantasy XV. A lot of villains in this game didn't get much screen time and died off screen. I don't care if they patched it, the scars in my heart are still there. That being said, I pick Arden. He could win a fight with his charisma alone. He's honestly a really good villain. I just wish we got to see more of the rest of the Niflheim Empire. Arden would be an assassin, and to differentiate him from Noctis, he would use his Armiger form for his combat style. His bravery attacks would be mid-range attacks, throwing his weapons or charging at enemies. His HP attacks would be similar to Noctis, as they would focus on warping, and his EX skill would be a warp, making him incredibly mobile. And there you have it. Those are the villains I most want to see added to Dissidia NT. This is just my opinion though, and I want to hear yours. What villains do you want to see added to the game? How do you think they would play? Do you think the characters I mentioned would play differently? Let me know in the comments. And if you liked this video and want to see more stuff about Dissidia, I'll be posting gameplay and tutorials about mechanics and characters weekly after the game's release. So if you creep on down to that subscribe button, you can stay up to date. Also, if you follow this channel on Twitter, creepycrawly_p, you'll be able to keep up with what's going on with the channel and vote for who you want me to cover first. You can also click the link on the screen to check out the video I made last week on heroes I want to see. Also, if you're hungry for more Dissidia info and want to learn more about how to play the game, check out Leaf 3GHP, Trueblade Seeker, and Jag Hanspin for quality breakdowns and tutorials. I'll leave links in the description below. And finally, if you creep by next week, I'll be covering what Dissidia is, what I think of the game so far based on the betas that I played, and some features that I hope get added to the game, so stay tuned.